everyone, and welcome to Today Explain, a podcast series where we are interviewing industry experts and leaders to find out their different types of challenges that they are facing in their own industry, and more importantly, the creative and unique solutions that they have come up with to overcome them. We are Outright BPO, also known as OBS, and we are a specialist in business process outsourcing. And we're here to help you find out how you can improve your business. And to help us find out more about this today, we have a very special guest for our first episode. To name a few of his achievements, he is an expert in leadership and talent development, finance and business transformation into the digital age. He has more than over a decade's experience as the managing director at DHL Asia Pacific Shared Services and is currently the group head of Global Shared Services and Finance Process Optimization. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Ross MACKAY. Hi, Ross MACKAY. Thank you for being here with us today.
Hi Joel, thanks for the invite. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much. So just to warm us up a little bit, could you please share with us a little bit about yourself? What brought you into this industry and what kept you hooked in here for so long?
I think a little bit like GBS, it's kind of been an evolution. For me, I started off in finance, very low-level jobs. My first job was actually doing reconciliations, and for your viewers, you can Google later what a tally machine is, but it was pre-calculators, so you had to do your reconciliation on pieces of paper.
Right.
So I go that far back, but basically over the years I started off in finance doing the sort of basic tasks that today are largely automated, but I was more interested in the process rather than the actual number, and that's always been my kind of interest, is around processes and how to make them better. So I kind of evolved from finance activities into finance systems and then into process optimization, and basically my career's taken me all around the world to do that, which is, I feel very privileged and lucky in that sense, but it's also meant that you take ideas from different industries to other industries, from different regions to other regions, and learn from different cultures, and I think it makes you a better person in truth, and it certainly helps you develop better solutions. So it's been an evolution of starting at the bottom and gradually getting slightly higher.
Nice. It's always nice to hear such great kind of success stories and how everyone started from small, but you actually made something life-changing out of it at the end as well. That's pretty cool. And you were talking about shared services and these kind of things earlier. So for our viewers at home, what exactly is a shared service?
Well, a shared service by definition is activities that are performed on behalf of others. So a typical example would be something like accounts payable, where you perform the accounts payable end-to-end process on behalf of a number of entities, as opposed to if you're in a normal situation, or probably a decade or 20 years ago, where companies would do their accounts payable team in each of the offices that they had. Then they would maybe centralize that into one office. And then the next evolution became shared services, where you migrate many locations into one lower cost. So typically it was done for wage arbitrage. So you see the evolution of the Chinas, the Indias, the Philippines and Malaysia in terms of hubs. And then what's gone further since then is really the sort of global business services phenomenon, which is really around managing multi-processes in one environment with one management group performing activities for multi-functions. So you could simplify GBS and say it's a multi-function shared service centre, providing services to lots of companies or lots of entities in a typically offshore, sometimes low cost, sometimes not so low cost, but more focusing on driving efficiency, end-to-end performance, and ultimately better outcomes.
Right. Interesting. That sounds very interesting. And I assume this has been around for like a very long time already. It's not something that's just new and up and coming, right?
I mean, I think if you speak to some industry veterans, and I'm not quite a veteran yet, but I've been around a while, they probably started their shared service centre journey 25 years ago. And certainly if I go back in my career, we had a shared service centre. It wasn't called a shared service centre, it was basically centralised accounting. And the difference really was that you were just performing tasks in one location on behalf of that same entity.
Right.
Whereas typically with a shared service centre, it's a different entity providing services to other entities via the way of some sort of contract with some KPIs to measure, some improvements to deliver, etc. So, but the concept is probably about 25 years old. So, you know, a lot of companies out there are still quite immature in terms of that journey. I mean, obviously technology helps you take leaps and bounds. I mean, if you think now, no one has a landline. Everyone's using a mobile phone, but you know, years ago everyone had a landline, and then we started getting mobile phones, and then we got rid of the landline. So, and you've probably got people listening to this going, "What's a landline?" You can Google that and put that next to your tally.
They're gonna have a long list of things they're gonna need to Google at the end of this, I imagine. So, seeing as how you're quite an expert in your own field of transformation into the digital age and all that, I guess the main big hot thing to talk about was back in 2020 when COVID was hit us, and I imagine every industry around the world took a pretty hard hit when that actually came about. So, like, what were some of like the main challenges you think that they faced, or maybe even you yourself faced in your field over there? And what were like some of the solutions or workarounds that you guys came up with for that?
Look, I think for many companies, and I speak to my colleagues at the time in the industry, there was, in some cases it was mad panic. People only had desktops. Their staff only had desktops, and this idea that suddenly someone was going to stick a desktop under their arm, and their screen under the other arm, and their keyboard in their rucksack, and head off to work from home, and no one really knew how long it was going to go on for. And so there's obviously, I think the first challenge was, how can we physically allow people to work from home and still do some sort of value add activity, because it's easy saying, okay, we need to work from home, and none of the systems are available from home, for example, so we need to enable that. So it's a little bit of a journey. If you start off on what I would say the kind of environmental side of things, you had to kind of provide the right kind of facilities for staff to do work from home. So that was the simple things about, can we buy some laptops, can we lease some laptops, can you help people take their desktops home. So lots of stories of that, people going out and buying laptops on credit cards in the shopping malls, because the vendors were sort of also completely kind of overwhelmed by requests from different companies. So that was kind of the first challenge, was really to create that kind of secondary environment. The other simple thing was, still a lot of companies were still reliant on paper. Now, whether that was an internal paper trail or, external suppliers sending paper invoices, or, goods received notes, or whatever it might be. So again, lots of stories of the challenges there.
So that kind of brought us into the integration with technology into all that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we were quite lucky in the respect we were halfway through a project to digitalise some of our processes and take away completely the paper element, which I mean, I'm not going to take credit for being ahead of the game when it comes to COVID and thinking that I knew it was coming and I had this all planned, but I always say that sometimes you make your own luck. If you keep trying hard enough, and I think from that point of view we're a little bit lucky. But I know that companies struggled with things like VPNs. Did they have enough access for people to work from home? That the mad rush to try and make applications available remotely. And then really on the management level, you know, we had kind of worked pretty much in an environment where everyone worked in the office and you could see the whites of their eyes. And then all of a sudden they're working remotely and we're all having to start using Teams and Zoom and WebEx again if you're a WebEx company. So that whole journey of, well, how do I know Joel's not just sitting drinking a cup of tea playing, you know, playing
How do you know I'm actually even part of this interview? I'm not just doodling off on my phone right now.
How do we know that he's actually at home? You know, I mean, so there was a whole kind of trust evolution of, you know, you need, you know, there was people talking about previously, staff asking to work from home, maybe, you know, you've got a plumber, can I just spend the day at home because
right.
time he fixes the leak, I've got to come to the office, I might as well work from home and be more productive, and it's like, well, no, I've not got a policy for that. Suddenly you've gone from one extreme to the other of, now you have to work from home. And then it's the whole, how do I check in on my... So I think it was a start off very kind of a lack of trust at the start of COVID, where people were saying, well, I need to check that they're actually there. So people would be sending messages just to see if how quickly they replied. And, you know, you heard from various horror stories where your managers would just call them up at, you know, 8 p.m. and say, well, you're at home, so it's not like you can't take the call because you've got nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So we had that whole kind of up and down swing of lack of trust, checking in, overworking people because you're at home. You know, the shops are closed. You can't go out to restaurants, so
can't really claim anything else. Yeah, what else are you going to be doing exactly? And
then the kind of slow recognition, I guess, in the sort of middle management layer where, oh, actually, we finished the work. Because actually, for a lot of people, it became much more productive to be at home, just to focus on work. And then again, that whole kind of swings it back again, where, you know, you've multi-generational families in one house where you've got the kids trying to do Zoom classes, and the mum and dad trying to work, the grandparents trying to, you know, get some peace and quiet, and everyone's on Zoom, the internet connection's not very good, and, you know, people then saying, you know, I can't work, I need to work in the morning and then work in the evening when we can share internet and various things like that. So I think there was this whole kind of ebbs and flow of trust and kind of just getting used to the whole thing. I think some good managers who operated well in an office environment, this was an easy transition. The control freaks, as I would call them, who, you know, were literally saying, hey Joel, what are you doing? Where they really had to micromanage. COVID was a disaster for them. I mean, it became a really stressful situation for them where they can't identify, you know, what work's Joel done today? Has he done all these invoices? Has he done all his reports? Has he done, you know, how do I know what he's not answering me? You know, where is he? Is he, you know, is he even at work? You know, is he even working? Is he?
Yeah.
That whole thing became a challenge for some people, but I think largely COVID showed us that this outdated view that we need to have everyone in the office 5 days a week, because if we can't see the whites of their eyes, we don't know that they're working, is, well, I hope, dead and buried forever. And in truth, we need to look at what our staff need and utilise the office spaces that we have. And in many cases, companies have reduced what they keep or changed the function of it.
Yeah.
For collaboration, for training, for, to dare I say it, socialising, for meeting up with colleagues, for building relationships that, you know, pre-COVID, you know, if I think about Malaysia as a location, it was always, let's go out for dinner, you know, or let's go out for lunch, and
we do like our food.
And you built your relationships around food, which is, you know, a fantastic thing to be able to do, but it's very difficult when the restaurants aren't open.
That's true.
You know, I think companies good companies and good managers have recognised the need to create an environment where people want to come back. Now, there are some people who situationally multi-generation, husband and wife working, small apartment, grandparents maybe on both sides. It's tough to work and function properly in that environment. So for them, it's like,
please, yes, let me come back.
I go back to the office and I get peace and quiet. It's fantastic. My boss might annoy me now and then by asking me questions about what I've done but I can just get on and it's quiet. So I think there are people in that situation. There are younger people, and again, I think this is a section of our workforce that a lot of people don't recognise, where their socialising happens around work. And if they're not at work, it can become very, very lonely for them. And it might not always be with work colleagues, but typically people congregate in city centres, right? And so if they've got a friend in another building or at the other side of town, then they meet up for dinner, they meet up for some drinks, whatever it might be, and that is their life. And if you're stuck at home 5 days a week and you're off finishing on work or finishing calls at kind of 7 p.m, then there's that, I'll just stay in. I'll stay in. And I think that's something that we also need to recognise. For a lot of people, typically younger but not always, the office environment was their social hub. And so for some people, they need to come back, not just for the peace and quiet we talked about, but also because they need to connect with people. And there's a whole mental health aspect of people getting together, having fun, and kind of feeling much better about their life and what they do. So we shouldn't underestimate that as well. It's a big part of why people do what they do.
Yeah, definitely. And then that's also like a main factor to their mental health, and also at the end of the day, ultimately their productivity in the office. If you've got a happy employee, you've got a good workforce with you over there as well. So picking up earlier from where you were saying how you were actually already halfway through digitalizing and bringing to the 21st century a company, there are still, even today in 2022, there are still many companies that believe in the old school brick and mortar style of running a business and a business structure. Do you there's any pros in doing it, in still going in the old school style away, or no man, you guys gotta come up, let's go with the computers?
Well, I think the simple answer is no, and it might be slightly more nuanced, but if you think about the infrastructure around maintaining an office or maintaining a factory, an office above a factory, etc. If you take a simple back office function, which is everything from HR, IT, finance, procurement, customer service, etc. A lot of that sits traditionally in an office environment. And I think there are two aspects to it. One, that comes with a huge cost. Floor space is expensive. The maintenance of floor space is expensive. And the question really is, does the work from home solve that problem? You can downsize for sure, but is it really changing the dynamic too much? And the simple answer is not really. It's a little bit like slicing a truffle. Working from home allows you to save some costs if you downsize your office. For some people, or for some organisations, they've kept the same office space. People just come in less. You sit there and scratch your head and go, why do you do that? But for some companies, their approach is, well, everyone needs their own desk, because then when they're in the office, it feels like home. And I can buy that to a certain extent, because the other extreme is you have the bench system and you have to book a desk, a little bit like you would book a desk at WeWork,
right,
or Spaces, or one of the co-working
spaces.
And that can make it feel very impersonal and feel like I'm not really attached to this company. And if I come in late one day, I might not even have a desk to sit at. So there's the challenge there around how do you get that balance correct of, I need an office or I need a desk because I need to feel part of the organisation, versus how do I optimise my cost structure and my operation structure to make sure that I'm not having a huge set of fixed costs that when companies are in a recession, or when the global economy is in a recession, or certain industries are in a recession, or they're not growing as fast, that their profits aren't eaten up completely by fixed costs.
Right.
And I think that's where, shared services and BPO and GBS, etc., all the different acronyms really can assist, because what you're really saying is, I've got these activities in this building that come with a very high cost. Can I find a way of reducing that cost and still maintaining or improving? And I think that's the opportunity for GBS professionals like myself. It's not about doing it the same way to the same quality as it was done before. That is largely a pointless exercise in that respect. You really want to offer a level of service never seen before, and you really want to offer an opportunity to provide additional services that were potentially not even thought about. And I think that is something that is really where the next evolution, if you like, of GBS organisations are going. It's this kind of concept of digital first, focusing on data, focusing on additional services. That could be revenue generation services, it could be data analytics, it could be simply automating processes and doing them on a far faster and higher quality plane. Right. Or a combination of everything, and I think that is where GBS is so interesting. The reason why one company sets up a GBS organisation is different from another one. The majority are set up for cost, and that's understandable. Why would you do something if it was more expensive? But I think those organisations that get hung up on cost really don't understand GBS, and they don't really understand the power of GBS and what opportunities you've got. And top performing GBS organisations are transformational, both in terms of the capability but also in terms of the company. First of all, you've got a rich talent pool of people who are keen to grow their career, learn new things, and see that they're adding value to an organisation. So if you can tap into that properly, then you have a massive talent pool on which to build for the future. You also have, just by sheer scale, the ability to do things that are quite difficult when you've got a smaller organisation or smaller entities operating independently. So that's where I think the opportunities are going, and I think it's something that really leaders, and it's not GBS that often gets to drive the bus. It's often corporate HQ making decisions, or owners making decisions, or shareholders making decisions. And I think that's where they need to be educated almost and understand the power of GBS, and not fearing giving up control, but basically saying these guys and these girls can do it so much better than we can.
So, talking about GBS and moving to the digital age, there are many options currently in the marketplace, but most of them are actually kind of pricey, especially for the smaller SMEs that are still recovering and all that. Would you say that it's a viable option for them to consider? It's okay, we know it's expensive, but this is something that we heard now, but it's going to make you boom way bigger in a short while time? Or what say you on that matter?
So that's a great question. I think the simple answer is, if we all want to stay like Kodak, we're going to die. And I think the challenge for many organizations and many leaders is they get stuck in the today, the here and now, and maybe, you know, next year or next quarter, etc. So if you can position yourself in 3 years' time and say, what do I expect my organization to look like? What size is it going to be? What services are we going to focus on? What customers are we going to focus on? What industries are we going to focus on? Then it becomes easier to kind of work with professionals like myself, like you and your organization, to say, okay, well, how do we chart that path? I think if you look at the cost of implementing digital solutions today with your current organization, it can be quite overwhelming. But in truth, there are very, very cheap options out there if you look hard enough. And more importantly, there are companies that recognize that their models don't always work in SME organizations or in specific sectors because maybe the margins are not big enough. So I would say, you know, start with what's your 3-5 year vision. Is it realistic for the size of your organization? Look at where you are today. Look at what you would like to be and the scope and capability of your organization you would like to be in 3 years, 5 years time. And then put together an investment plan over that period. You don't need to do everything at once. I think one of the things that I've done in my current role is, you know, put together this kind of vision. You know, people look at it and go, well, I'm never going to do that. You know, 4 years later, it's largely finished. And the point was, it wasn't one massive big of an investment at the start. It was start with a blank sheet of paper, work out what we need, and then work out how we fund different elements of it as we go along. So you need to look at it in that kind of bite-sized chunk. It's a little bit like doing a jigsaw drill, you know. If you just push all the bits of paper, the little bits of jigsaw pieces on on your table and then start building it, you know, you get to a point where you're like, oh, this is not going to happen.
Right.
Typically you build outside edge and then you kind of start looking at sections that kind of join that together, and then eventually you build in the way, and at the end you've got this beautiful picture.
Yeah.
Digital transformation in many ways is like that. You know, people get completely sidetracked by some of the messaging in the market. You know, I'm going to do an ERP implementation and that's me doing digital transformation. I'm sorry, no, it's not. That's you doing a finance systems upgrade. And you shouldn't get confused as the two things. You know, a proper digital transformation starts with people and process, and technology is just an enabler. And anyone that does it the other way around is absolutely 100% guaranteed to fail. They just won't always say it, which is why you hear 80% of transformation projects fail. The truth is a lot higher than that. When it's technology driven, when it's IT driven, it always fails to meet what's actually expected at the start.
I understand.
And I think it's very, very important. You know, and we were talking off air about the Future of Work Summit that I was at yesterday. You know, it was driven by a technology company who have got a great product, but in truth, most of the discussion was about how do we enable our teams to become digital ready? Have we got the capability in-house to be able to support this transformation? How do we keep staff motivated to stay with us longer by giving them new technologies and learning new things, so that it's aligned more with what their career plans are? That's a large part of digital transformation. It isn't, you know, there's a new piece of technology, get on with it. We'll leave it in your capable hands. So when you come back to your original point of you know, is it too expensive? It's only too expensive if you think you can do it all in one go, and you've got some sort of capacity in the current workload to be able to do it. Because that's another reason why things fail. You're like, we're going to do this project with the same people who've got a day job, where they're going to find that these hours that today they're doing nothing with, which we know is not true, to try and run projects. So, you know, the point being is you need to plan properly, you need to be realistic with your plans, and you need to provide or find an investment strategy, and therefore an implementation approach that works for you. But for sure, there are very cheap solutions out there that will completely transform the way you do, whether that's just getting rid of paper and digitizing your end-to-end process, or whether it's really, full end-to-end digitalization, including the whole customer experience.
Very nice. Thank you so much for that advice, honestly, on how SMEs can actually, don't have to look at such the big picture, take it small, start building your framework, understand really what it is you're trying to go from there. So I've also heard a lot of great success stories from your side as well, but I'm sure there are many viewers that are watching in who are, been running it for a long time, a bit more of the older or maybe younger, but still have that little bit of fear inside them. Now what with, outsourcing and digitalization and all that, it could lead towards, breach in data security, or, maybe losing control in certain regards in their company, or how the structure may work, or I don't know, maybe other structures in that area. As an expert in, change management and, seeing how you've actually handled so many different companies in the past, what would your advice be to them in regards to these kind of things that are, for those entrepreneurs who are slightly more reluctant to accept the change?
Yeah, look, I think it's comes back to a point I made earlier about GBS or BPO or shared services is not about doing the same thing in a different location. So I think to answer that point, there are many different elements to it. So simple things to ask someone who's currently managing an in-house team that's interested, or maybe not interested, who's, as you said, scared to do some sort of outsourcing or some sort of offshoring. There's a few simple things. Today, how do you know things are going well? Because when you speak to people, they'll tell you, but I don't believe you can do it better than I can do it currently. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, what's your metrics for this, thinking that you're better than someone else can do it? So I think that's the first thing to do. And largely there is none. It's just a hunch that everything's going well because I don't hear any problems.
Fair.
So that's the first thing. So what can you do as a GBS organisation or as a BPO organisation? You can give them visibility. That's the first thing. So let's just take again, I'll use accounts payable because for probably everyone that's going to watch this, all four of us, they will understand this process. So today, an accounts payable organisation that's done in a local finance team, invoices get put into that department and they get processed. And if you want to know the status of something, you just walk over and ask them, has that invoice been paid? When's it getting paid, etc. Mm-hmm. If you think that's an efficient process, then we might as well end the conversation here. But the true fact is there's zero visibility unless you ask.
Yes.
So bringing visibility to a process, whether that's digitalizing the process and then making it available via an end-to-end workflow with different statuses of transactions, with seeing, when something's on hold, when something's awaiting approval, etc., that can be quite eye-opening for someone who hasn't seen that before. So that's something quite simple. Typically, where shared services are massively ahead of any retained or in-organisation comes through finance team is in two areas. It's the internal controls. The world-class shared service centres have got world-class internal controls. So they are ensuring compliance to policy and process by default. They are highlighting risks with data privacy or data, any potential leaks. Mm-hmm. They are providing constant review of processes to identify where they can be done better. So that to me is really, really important. The other aspect around shared services is I was just touching on, is this constant ability to evolve a process, to say, we can do this better, we can do it faster, we can do it more automated.
Okay.
So as I said, what you're not really looking to do when you outsource or you move to a shared service center organization is to move as is. So many people, you've heard the phrase, it should be banned in the industry, it's an embarrassment to us all, lift and shift. So you're only then offering something cheaper. So right away you're focusing on the lower end of the scale, right? Because you're saying, well, the only reason I'm moving it is you do it for $10, I can do it for $5. 50% improvement. Wow. Then you're only focusing on cost and you're not focusing on what else you can deliver in that process. You know, if we go back to accounts payable again, you know, can we process quickly to get, you know, early payment discounts? Is that something that your industry offers? Can we reduce the number of people that need to do it? Because in essence, if you've got 45-day payment terms with your suppliers, why do you want everything processed in 2? It's just going to sit in your GL and your AP for another 43 days. We can reduce the number of people doing that process, do it cheaper, do it a little bit more just in time, and not have to worry about making sure we pay on time. So there are a lot of aspects around simple processes that can be massively transformational for an organization if they work with the right partner, if they find the right team to work with, if they, you know, do what I would say a kind of brainstorming workshop to say, well, what is it you do today? And, you know, what is it that would interest you? You know, here's a little toolkit of things that we could add to the discussion, whether it's automating, simple digitizing, auto archiving so you don't have all these, you know, paper everywhere, you know, data analytics around your process, spend management around your invoices that you probably don't even have today, you know. So a lot of these things around analytics, process improvement, the internal controls built in as standard, all of that can give someone who's nervous, scared, or just downright against the idea comfort that you have the capability in your organization to move them to the next level, take them on a journey that helps their business, not just say I'm going to take cost out, because cost is often wasted, because you then see that only as cost and then you just spend the saving. Whereas if you can deliver on cost and deliver on, you know, something transformational or something that gives them skills and data that they didn't have before, then, you know, you're building in this whole concept of what is GBS really about, which is process excellence and value add.
That's very nicely said. I gotta say, it's, you know, basically it's don't knock it till you've tried it. And there are like a million success stories out there on how they've actually helped smaller companies as well. So thank you so much for sharing all that. So coming into our last question for today, as we're, you know, coming to the end of 2022 and I hope the end of this endemic, what do you think are like some of the challenges that you're anticipating for the coming year, next year, 2 years from now? And like, you know, what's the plan for attacking those kind of things?
So I think it's largely around people. You know, we've heard about the Great Resignation, we've heard about quiet quitting and all those other new buzz. I think what it comes down to is that people reassessed their life goals during COVID. You know, when you're at home day in, day out, what really becomes important to you if you haven't seen your family for a year and a half, if you can't go to someone's funeral, someone's wedding, someone's birthday celebration, you know, a lot of it comes down to family and this recognition that perhaps pre-COVID we were all prioritizing work more than we possibly should have. I think that has changed people's outlook on work and what they want from an employer. I think there are people coming into the workforce now who are confused about what work is about. I don't mean that in a bad way, but they start work and they're sitting there going, well, this is not what I thought I was going to be doing, and this isn't something that I'm going to be motivated to do for a while. I don't think that has necessarily changed in the last 5 years, in truth. This is something that probably 6, 7, 8 years ago I saw was something that was starting to become a phenomenon and something that we needed to be ahead of the curve on. So, understanding that, people coming into the workforce don't want to wait 3 years for promotion. They don't want to do the same job every day for 3 years. They want new things regularly. They want to keep learning. They want to see that they're progressing. What's happened with the pandemic is that younger workforce is now seeing that as an absolute priority, whereas before it was almost, well, good employers will do that anyway. Now it's like, well, if you're not going to do that, I'm not even going to speak to you. So this whole idea of trying to align what the workforce in general terms wants out of work and what companies need from a workforce is somehow become quite skewed. And so what you're seeing is this constant change, people changing roles, trying to find almost like their destination, and more importantly, companies sitting there scratching their heads saying, well, I don't understand why all these people are leaving, which is largely sad, because in truth, what is it we actually need? We all need to feel respected, loved, challenged, have the opportunity to grow, and see a future, buy into some sort of journey that I'm going to take during the next X years in this company. If they don't see that, if there's no kind of journey of hope, they've gone. It's just a matter of when. So for me, the large part of the future challenge as leaders, whether it's in GBS or any organisation, is how can you ensure that what you're offering as work, in inverted commas, aligns with your current workforce and those that you want to attract. Because if you can't do that, you've just got this constant flux of people leaving, people joining, people leaving, people joining, people leaving, people joining. And that's not good for a business that wants to grow. It's also not good for a business who wants to attract the right talent, because frankly, if you cannot deal with that requirement, if you like, from our staff, no one will come and join you. Very quickly, reputations get absolutely tanked in the market, because it's like, well, that's not a place you're going to go and learn anything. So unless they're paying you a lot of money, it's not even worth joining them. And I think that's something that's quite critical, that reputations that were massively impressive pre-COVID have literally gone through the plug hole post-COVID, because of the way companies have treated staff during COVID, come out the other side and dictated policies that don't align with what staff want, or fail to innovate and offer a different type of work. And so what you're seeing is a lot of people joining startups because it's new, it's interesting, there's kind of this constant feeling of renewal, and traditional companies struggling to recruit in some cases and retain their top talent, because, as I said, people now want something different.
It's very, very, very true. I have to agree with that. I've heard so many stories of everyone saying that, for the company they're working in, their retention rate is just like through the roof and everyone's just cycling through it all the way. And like you said exactly, for the most part, is people can't see where they're going when they're sitting in those companies. And I think that is a very strong motivator indeed for anyone really. If you want to progress, you got to know where you're going. If not, why am I waking up every day in the morning and coming into the office for, So with all that said, thank you so much, Mr. Ross MACKAY, for taking your time to be with us here today and for helping us discover all these hidden gems and solutions with, digitalization and OBS and GBO and all these different type of things, and how they can actually improve not only just, gigantic MNC companies, but even really small businesses with the SMEs and with mom and pop stores. Even at some points they would be able to take over these things and actually integrate them into their businesses. And to all our listeners as well that are watching it, and if you think your business would be able to be improved with the aid of outsourcing, and also with just wanting to discover on what it really is and how we can provide a solution for you, you can feel free to contact us with our number over here, or even just go to our website at outrightbposervices.com. And we'll be happy to share with you a free consultation how we can actually bring your company to its best potential. Once again, thank you so much, Mr. Ross MACKAY, for taking your time to be with us here today.
Thank you. It's been good fun. So I hope it's interesting for people and a little bit thought-provoking at the same time.
I'm sure it will. It definitely is, as I've even myself learned so much just from sitting here with you and talking to you. So thank you again so much.
Thank you.